Hello, everyone, and welcome in to another episode of the RTI and VR2 Recruiting Podcast. I am Nathaniel Rutherford, the managing editor of RocketTopInsider.com, joined by Brandon Martin of VR2. Matt is dealing with something, and plus Matt had all of you over at VR2 had a very busy Wednesday. I mean, all of us did, but Matt was just kind of up from before the sun rose to way after the sun set, and he needs some rest. So, Brandon, you and I are going to carry this podcast, and we're going to do kind of a recap of Tennessee's, what I think a pretty strong, pretty impressive early signing period class. You know, there definitely could have been, I guess, some improvements, but it could have been a lot worse. Tennessee essentially went 5 for 5 on the main guys that they were targeting, and they were, really in contention for on Wednesday, who were announcing. And then we'll get to stuff here in the last part of the podcast talking about who Tennessee is still going to be targeting afterwards. But, Brandon, you signed 16 of the 18 guys who you had committed coming into the day, and then you add the likes of Tyler Barron, Morven Joseph, Laneith Whitehead, Jimmy Holliday, and then you also get Reginald Perry. We were all 5 for 5 pretty much. You got a little greedy, as you said on Twitter on the coin toss, and you said maybe Tennessee gets Tisdall, but essentially we were all pretty spot on with who we thought Tennessee was going to get. Before we kind of jump into the main points of our podcast here, what are your overall impressions of this class? Because I think for the most part, I think Tennessee did a pretty good job of being able to address their needs and still leave plenty of room for what I think could be an even stronger potentially actual national signing day in February.
I see a lot of guys in this class. Right now, Tennessee, you signed all of the guys that you really wanted to sign that day. Now, they would have loved to have gotten Tisdall. They would have loved to have gotten Octavius Oxendine, but they knew those were going to be contested. They had kind of backed off a little on Oxendine. I think they felt like Kentucky was stronger there. I think that's part of the reason you saw him push for Reginald Perry. And Perry's versatile. Perry could potentially play some offense for him as well. I do think they wanted Tisdall. I think that was, like I said, I believe that was a coin toss all the way down. Got a little greedy. That one bit me. I think they would have liked to have had him, but of the guys that they really thought they had a chance to bring in and really felt good about landing, they got them all. They didn't lose anybody out of the class. Mm-hmm. You had everybody that you wanted to sign. Apparently, Tennessee had asked Kyrie Miller to push back. Seems like they have asked Williamson to push back. There was some worry about, is Jimmy Callaway going to stay in the class? He does. Of course, we had the rumblings last week of Harrison Bailey to Georgia, which we all kind of laughed at and said that's not happening, but it was still a relief when it didn't happen. So you didn't lose anybody. The class stayed together. And I tell you, when I look at this class top to bottom, I see a lot of immediate impact guys. Now, some of that is Tennessee has some needs. You've got guys leaving. You need some young guys to come in and play. And part of it is Tennessee signed some really good players on Wednesday. Harrison Bailey obviously figures in immediately for the starting job at quarterback. If not, he's the favorite. I think Morven Joseph is going to see early playing time. Tyler Barron's going to see early playing time. Bryson Eason's going to be in there. Amari Thomas is going to be in that discussion. Laneith Whitehead's going to be in that discussion. I think Jalen Hyatt's going to play early. I mean, you got a lot of guys in this class that are going to come in and immediately make an impact, and I think that bodes well for Tennessee because this is the second class in a row that Jeremy Pruitt has brought in. This is his second full class, and it's not done yet, but it's his second full class, and there are quality players, and there are guys that you go, he fits the system, and he's highly skilled, and he can probably start or at least contribute right away. And that's what you want in a class, especially while you're in the process of building a program, is to get guys that can play early and often and help you. Tennessee got a class full of those guys.
Yeah, that leads perfectly into the next topic of discussion I wanted to have with you, Brandon, because in my live stream of the RTI live show that I did late on Wednesday night after Tennessee, the basketball game finished, which we won't even touch that, but Tennessee basketball, after that loss, I hopped on to YouTube and did a live stream for our listeners, and one of the questions someone asked me was how many first-year starters are in this group, and I agree with you. I think there's a lot of guys who have an instant impact. You look at a Keyshawn Lawrence, you look at Amari Thomas, Tyler Barron, Laneith Whitehead, and I think Jimmy Callaway and Jalen Hyatt will have instant impacts too. But when it comes to actually looking at least from this group of 21 guys of actual day, maybe not even day one, but guys who are freshman starters, you can look at the 2019 class, and you were expecting even before this season started, once you're in spring practices, once you got into fall camp, you were expecting probably at least 4, if not more, of those guys in the 2019 class to be, having to count on them, if not day one, at least pretty early on in their careers to be starters. And as the season went along, you saw Tennessee had, kind of the surprise one was Warren Burrell, the cornerback starting, but he started. Wanya Morris was a starter. Darnell Wright was a starter. Henry Toa was a day one starter. Eric Gray didn't start, but he obviously he had some contributions early on, and then he made obviously the big, huge game against Vanderbilt later in the season, which you were counting on one of the defensive linemen to come in and be an instant impact guy. Everyone kind of thought it'd be Savion Williams, but it actually ended up being Darrell Middleton. So you were counting on guys in that class to be day one starters or starters pretty early on in the season. Brandon, with this class, I think there's a lot of guys who can play roles that have instant impacts as true freshmen. But I think there's a lot of guys. I think this class isn't as dependent. You're not having to have these guys come in and be day one stars. That obviously could change if Tennessee, lands Darnell Washington between now and February. Obviously, that he's because of Tennessee's need at tight end, he would be a day one starter for sure. But I think, to me, looking at guys who could potentially start as a true freshman in this class, I think you can circle Keyshawn Lawrence. I think he's
absolutely
one of the obvious ones. I think a sleeper one, just because of how I think he fits into this defense and fits into the role that I think Jeremy Pruitt would have for him, and just also how high I am on this kid's ability. I think Danico Slaughter is a underrated pick for a potential starter as a true freshman. Outside of those two guys, though, I think maybe Tyler Barron, because you don't have a lot of him or Morven Joseph, just because you don't really have. You're losing Darrell Taylor, and none of Tennessee's guys behind him this season have really proven to be consistent pass rushers. So Tennessee needs a pass rusher. We're going to see Barron and Joseph both start their careers as outside linebackers for Tennessee. So I think one of those two guys could be, if not day one, at least kind of starting at some point in their freshman seasons. But I don't think you're not counting on anybody in this class to be a day one starter, and you don't need you needed Wanya Morris and Darnell Wright to come along and be starters as freshmen at the tackle positions. I don't think you need Key Lawrence to be a starter, but I think he's just good enough to where it would not shock me at all if he finds a role as a corner, as a safety. Somehow, I think Keyshawn Lawrence is going to be playing a big role in Tennessee's defense this year, or this upcoming season, excuse me.
I think Keyshawn Lawrence is definitely going to be a guy who he'll start before the season's over. I'll tell you one position where you are looking for an immediate need day one starter, and I think it's going to be one of the freshmen, is middle linebacker beside Henry Toa, because you have got to have another one. Now, Laneith Whitehead is going to get his first look at running back. Now, he may move back. Who knows? I got to think that's Bryson Eason's job. If they're looking at Whitehead as a running back early on, Bryson Eason's going to plug in there next to Toa, and I really have a hard time seeing somebody wrestling that job away from him unless it's his buddy Martavius French. One of those two is going to start day one. They're both going to play a lot. I think Morven Joseph's going to start day one, and I think he's probably going to start all season. Morven Joseph is built. He is. Yeah. If Jeremy Pruitt could build a pass rusher for his defense on a computer, he would make Morven Joseph. This kid is versatile. He played all over the front seven when he was in high school. He already knows how to cover, so he wasn't handing the dirt all the time. He played some outside linebacker. He played some middle linebacker. I've seen tape where they bumped him in to defensive tackle, which just wasn't fair for some guards. What do you do with that? But they moved him all over the front seven. And because of him being used to that, because of his speed, I think this is why he gets on the field ahead of Barron early, is Morven already knows how to cover.
Yes, he does. That was one thing that stood out about my watching of this film. I finally got to do all the impact report stuff for Tennessee's 5 new signings on Thursday. I watched a little bit of his film before, I think, on Tuesday night, but I really got to dissect it on Thursday, and that was something that stood out to me. Not only is he a proficient pass rusher, he's also really good at stopping the run, but as you said, he can cover. Like he's not just a full speed all the time kind of running ahead. He actually shows patience He shows the ability to dissect a play and let it kind of happen and unfold. And I'm highly impressed by Morven Joseph. He's a guy that I think is an absolute steal for Tennessee in this class.
Morven Joseph was a steal. He is a dynamic player. I think he is criminally underrated. This is a kid whose name you're going to know. And I think he's going to get on the field ahead of Tyler Barron, really simply because he's used to playing that outside linebacker spot, and Tyler Barron's used to being a defensive end. And I know it's real similar, but Barron's going to have to learn to play more in space, and he has the ability to do it, but he has to learn to do it. Joseph already knows how. Barron's going to have to learn how to have some coverage responsibilities. Joseph already knows how. I think they're both outstanding pass rushers. Joseph is faster. Barron's bigger and maybe a little stronger, but Joseph is no slouch in that area. And I think Joseph is a little more polished with his hand technique. I think he's just a better fit. He's made for this defense, and I think that's going to slide him in there. So I think you're going to see those two guys, Morven Joseph and I think Bryson Eason, probably starting day one. On the other side of the ball, Harrison Bailey, if he's not the starting quarterback in the opening game of the 2020 season, I will be shocked.
Really?
I fully expect Harrison Bailey to get every chance to win this job, and I expect him to win it. And I mean no disrespect to Jarrett Garantano or to Brian Maurer or to JT Shrout or to Kasim Hill, but Harrison Bailey's not coming here to sit a year. He's just not. He is the real deal. He has all the tools that you can ask for. If he is healthy, they are going to give him the keys to this car. He was one of the interesting things that we've talked about is, who's the best player in the class or who's going to have the biggest impact. One of the questions that I liked, and we had this in a group thread at VR2, was who do you think the most important player in this class is? And even though we all disagreed on everything else, everybody agreed it's Harrison Bailey, and it's not because he's a quarterback. It's because Harrison Bailey is so widely respected for his ability. You had guys that are in this class because they wanted to play with Harrison. You have a lot of guys in this class that are in this class because they respect Harrison and believe in what he's going to be able to do. I think he's going to win this job because I believe they trust him to take the whole playbook. And go watch tape of Jarrett Garantano. Go watch tape of Brian Maurer post the head injury, and watch tape of JT Shrout and tell me you believe that Jim Chaney trusts those guys with the whole playbook based on his play calling.
No.
And I don't think he does. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful to those guys, but I don't believe Chaney trusts them with the entire playbook. He has said that's one of the reasons they wanted Bailey. They believe that he can run the whole offense and lets them go into everything that they want to go into. I'd be stunned if Harrison Bailey is not a day one starter. A sleeper, depending on what happens with some guys up front. We think Brandon Kennedy is going to come back for a sixth year. We know he's pursuing it. He should get it, but hey, it's the NCAA, so if it makes sense and it's related to Tennessee, it's probably not going to happen. And we don't know the situation with Trey Smith yet.
Right.
Now, Trey could decide to go. Trey Smith's one of those guys, if he goes to the NFL, no one's going to blink. No one's going to blame him. Everybody's going to be glad. Everybody's going to be happy for him, wish him all the best in the world. Trey Smith's also one of those guys that if Trey Smith said, no, I want to come back and get a degree and play my senior year, nobody's going to blink at that either. No one's going to be surprised because that's his character. If Trey goes, there's a big hole at left guard and right guard. Even though Tennessee got some production there this year, it never really got all the way settled. Mm-hmm. And I think having that one still in transition, and then you've got the left guard spot, I think a guy like James Robinson could come in and play early. I think he could see a start before the season's over. He's very physical. I think of the guards Tennessee has got in the class right now, Robinson is probably the most ready to plug and play. He's solid in pass protection. His feet are good, but he's a mauler in the running game.
Yes, he is. Yeah.
And I think that's what Tennessee wants right now because they can afford to be kind of maulers in the middle because your tackles are so good, especially on the left side because Wanye is so athletic and can get so far outside. You can have a mauler next to him who maybe isn't as good in pass protection, but Robinson's pretty good in pass pro. But I think he is the most ready to come in and plug right away. I think he could play there, and I think Jalen Hyatt is probably going to start before the season's over as at least the slot receiver, if not number 2. He'll make a run at that.
Yeah, I think Hyatt makes a run as a starter at some point, like you said. Even if he doesn't, I think he plays enough role where he gets 15, 20 catches on this offense next year. Because I think the offense next year is going to be, as you said, if Harrison Bailey wins this job, it's going to be interesting to see what they do passing wise, how much they run the ball. Because this year, they, because of the way the offensive line struggled also to get a consistent push in the running game, and you didn't have a bigger back, and it just, for whatever reason, Eric Gray, I think, kind of hit a freshman wall. He also wasn't as good at pass blocking. You didn't have the production from the running game this year you liked. So I wonder for this upcoming season what Jim Chaney does offensively. I still think they're going to be a little more pass heavy no matter who the quarterback is, because I think that might be how Tennessee's roster is designed, because you're not, yes, you're losing Juwan Jennings, Marquez Callaway and Dominic Wood Anderson, but you have a returning of Josh Palmer, Brandon Johnson, who's a solid veteran guy. You're going to have Ramel Keaton, who's going to be another year older, and I really like his upside. Cedric Tillman is a really good prospect, I think, who has upside as well. And then, like we said, you're bringing in 2 speed guys with Jalen Hyatt and Jimmy Callaway, who have the ability to just take the top off the defense, especially Hyatt. We've raved about him before. I don't know how many times in this podcast, Brandon, not just about his speed, but his route running and everything that he brings to the table too. On the flip side, you mentioned, you didn't think Bailey came here to sit for a year. Who in this class does redshirt? Because I look at that was another question I got on the live stream, and I was going through the class, and I thought, I could see maybe just a small handful of guys. I think Reginald Perry is a good candidate for redshirt, because you don't need a ton of immediate contributors on the defensive line, and I think you already have guys like Amari Thomas and Dominic Bailey who would be more suited to be immediate contributors, because Perry's played defensive line, offensive line, tight end, receiver. He hasn't been able to stick at one position. I think he needs to stick at one position. It'll do wonders for him, and I think he needs a year to learn. So he's the guy I circled as a potential redshirt guy. Depending on the center situation, I think Javonte Spraggins could redshirt, but like you said, I mean, there's going to be an opportunity probably at one, if not both, the guard positions and maybe center. So maybe Spraggins or Robinson both kind of get involved there. Cooper Mays as well. But I think one of those interior guys red shirts. I think Reginald Perry red shirts. Maybe Tamarion McDonald, because he's going to be I guess technically not really switching positions, because he's already played a little bit of nickel at Whitehaven. But I think maybe Jabari Small, because you already have guys on the running back room that are similar to him. Right now with Eric Gray and Ty Chandler, I don't see why Jabari Small would have a huge role this year. But that's why I wouldn't pick Leith Whitehead or T. Hodge, because they bring something totally different to the running back room that Tennessee doesn't have. So that's why I wouldn't pick them. That's kind of, I mean, aside from a guy getting hurt or something like that where they had the red shirt, that's kind of it. I think everyone else in this class, I don't know that they redshirt. I think Danico Slaughter, even if he doesn't get a big role in defense, which I think he will have a role in defense, he's a guy that I think is just, him and Morven Joseph both are going to be really good special teams players, if nothing else, in their first year. They have a lot of really good special teams ability. Jimmy Holliday, I don't think he's redshirting. I don't think you can keep him off the field. Will Albright's not going to redshirt, because I think they need him as a long snapper. Obviously, the top 3 or 4 guys probably aren't redshirting with Barron, Lawrence, Amari Thomas, and you said you don't believe Bailey will either. Whitehead's not. I don't think Dominic Bailey will. Maybe he does, but I doubt it. I don't think Jimmy Callaway does. Bryson Easton doesn't. I don't think Martavius French does either. I don't think there's really a lot of redshirt candidates in this class.
Jimmy Callaway is a maybe to me.
Okay.
And it's not a knock on Jimmy's ability, but Jimmy didn't play wide receiver in high school. Jimmy was a quarterback, and Jimmy was running a very when Morrow needed the big play, it was snap it to Jimmy in the shotgun, student body left, student body right, whichever side he felt like he could get the corner on fastest, and it worked pretty well. They're going to have to teach Jimmy to be a wide receiver. Yeah. And he has all the talent in the world. He has all the tools in the world, and I believe he'll learn that. But with some of the guys that are ahead of him and some of the guys being a little more polished, I wouldn't be stunned to see Jimmy redshirt. And remember, too, you can play 4 games now. You can play in 4 games now and still redshirt. I think Jimmy could play it. I think Jimmy will probably play his 4 games, but I think there's a chance he could redshirt. I think Tamarion McDonald's kind of in the same boat. I think that he could redshirt. He or Slaughter, one of them will probably get a red shirt, and it may be a thing where Jeremy Pruitt decides to play one of them for 4 games and one of them for the other. I think they've got a similar skill set. I think they bring a similar physicality to the table. They're both going to be big guys in the secondary. They both can knock your lights out and do it clean. They are both big hitters. They're both solid in coverage. I think they're similar. I think Slaughter is more of a pure safety, where Tamarion is just I'm going to move you somewhere and cause chaos with you and make it really hard on someone. But those guys, I think the odd man out in that interior line group, especially if Kennedy and or Smith come back, you could see them get a red shirt. I think I'll give you one. I think Cooper Mays is going to red shirt.
Okay.
Cooper had knee issues all year at Catholic.
Yeah, you're right. That's right. I forgot about his injury. Yeah.
Cooper had knee issues all year at Catholic. If Brandon Kennedy comes back and Tennessee can look and go, I have Brandon Kennedy playing center, who is going to be on the All-American and the Remington watch lists if he comes back. I've got Jackson Lampley behind him that I really feel good about at center. I have Jerome Carvin, who can play some center, and I've got Jontez Spraggins that I think could play some center. I'm redshirting Cooper Mays for a year. I'm going to let him get those knees right. I'm going to give him a year to get bigger, stronger, acclimated to the program, but get those knees right so he can come in and help you. Because, man, when he's healthy, he is a nasty blocker. He's a really, really great kid, but he's one of those – he has that streak and that switch that you like in interior linemen. Mm-hmm. You know, and interior offensive linemen, almost all of them, and this is one of the reasons I love offensive linemen, they're usually goofy, happy-go-lucky, funny. They're usually some of the smarter guys on your team. Most everybody gets along with them, but especially those inside guys, there is a switch they throw between the lines during the whistles, and they get nasty. And Cooper's one of those guys, and I love it. But I think they may realize we have an opportunity to let Cooper get healthy. We don't have to have him this year. We're going to need him next year. Let's get him healthy, get him right. But there are not a lot of redshirt candidates on this class, and a lot of your guys that are coming in that may redshirt, like we talked about, are probably going to play their 4 games. Mm-hmm. Whether anybody gets hurt or not, they're probably going to play their 4 games. So I don't see a lot of guys getting redshirted unless Tennessee is able to just play them the 4 and then not need them.
Yeah, I think this past 2019 class there wasn't a whole lot of redshirt guys either, because that's just the state of what Tennessee's rebuild's in right now. You need these young guys to come in and play immediately or play at some point in this season, especially with the way Tennessee has depth concerns. I think they addressed a lot of their depth in the last class, and they did an even better job here in this class of doing it. But they still don't have ideal depth across the board at most positions at this point. So you're going to need a lot of the guys in this class to contribute, and not just on offense or defense, but like I said, special teams is a big part of where I think some of these guys can make a big impact, and that's where I think if it's Slaughter, or if it's McDonald, or if it's Morvan Joseph, I think those three to me, from watching film and stuff, those 3 I think could have a huge impact in the special teams game, because I just think they're just really good, just kind of big athletes, physical athletes that just have a way of wreaking havoc and causing havoc on the field no matter what they're doing. Brandon, a couple more topics here before we get into kind of where Tennessee moves forward after the early signing period is now over. One question I think is always an interesting one. We won't know until everything kind of pans out. And right now, obviously the recruiting rankings aren't final, and this isn't even necessarily about recruiting rankings, I would say. But looking at this class right now for Tennessee and who they signed in the early signing period, who in your mind is the most underrated guy? Because I think there are probably 2 or 3 I think obvious ones for me. I think one that's immediately going to jump to everybody's head is Jimmy Holliday, because he's just a freak athlete who runs a laser timed 4.3840. The only
Jimmy,
reason I think
Jimmy the Jet, man.
Yeah, he is the Jet. I mean, watching his, I haven't enjoyed watching a prospect's film like I have Holliday's in a while. I mean, if you haven't watched it, if you're listening to this, you haven't gone and watched Jimmy Holliday's senior tape, go watch it. It is a joy to watch just him making guys look silly. I heard a lot of people kind of comparing him to Lamar Jackson. I thought, now hold your horses here for a second. But after watching it, I understand. I mean, he isn't the greatest passer, but he's actually got a better arm than I thought he did,
Yep.
or that I thought going into watching his film. It's a little bit more accurate. He's got to work on his accuracy if he wants the quarterback thing to stick in college. He's going to have to work on his mechanics. He's got a lot to kind of improve on as a passer. But from a pure just dynamic athlete standpoint, there isn't anyone better in Tennessee's class. There probably isn't anyone better on Tennessee's current roster, period, who's a better just athlete than Jimmy Holliday. I think he's kind of the obvious choice to me. Two other guys I would throw in there as the maybe the most underrated in this class would be Danico Slaughter, because I think he's a legit 4-star prospect who I think he's a 4-star on Rivals right now, but I think Slaughter is a really good athlete. And then I think a guy who's really way too low right now, I think it's T. Hodge. I think Hodge brings a lot of intriguing ability to that running back room, and I think he got hurt, he came back, and I think he had a strong finish to his senior season. So I'll be intrigued. I'll be interested to see kind of what happens with him and his ratings and stuff. But he's like in the 800s right now, and he's a guy who's 6 foot 215 or so, and ran at one point I think like a 4.5 40. I think is what his time, somewhere around there. I mean that's he watching him on film, it is highlight tape, but they showed him as a lead blocker. I mean, this guy is a physical. You don't see running backs have on a highlight film them as a lead blocker for another running back, like as a fullback H-back role. I mean, T. Hodge just has an ability that I think Lenneth Whitehead is going to probably be more ready to go and kind of be the big back guy because he is bigger. But I think T. Hodge is underrated too. I think those are kind of the three guys I circle as being the big underrated prospects of this class who maybe aren't getting talked about as much as the Amari Thomases, as the Harrison Baileys and whatnot, but who I think could have impacts on this team.
I think that I'm with you on T. Hodge being rated too low. Whoever has T. Hodge in the 800s has not tried to tackle him.
Yeah.
That is a bad dude that runs with bad intentions, and Jeremy Pruitt has been looking for that guy. He thought he had it in Jeremy Banks, and they missed that all last season.
Yeah.
And when Tennessee's offense, when you go back to when they were really efficient, it was when Tim Jordan was able to do that. And Tim Jordan hasn't been able to do that all the time. He hasn't been able to do it consistently, and Jeremy Pruitt is looking for that big bully back and that short yardage back that he can go with. So I'm with you on T. Hodge. Danico Slaughter is rated way too low. Yeah. Danico Slaughter is a top 200. Danico Slaughter might be a top 150 guy. That is an elite talent that is rated way too low. Again, I'm with you on Jimmy Holliday. When 247 reevaluates their recruits and starts looking at senior tape, he's going to skyrocket.
Yeah, because right now they haven't, looking at his history on 247, they haven't evaluated him since March 31st, and they gave him an 84 rating back then. He's in like the 1400s on 247. He's like, I think 789 of their composite. He's like you said, he is going to skyrocket the next time they actually evaluate his senior film. He might
be hitting his head against the top 200 as well. His senior tape is really good. It's really, really good. And he's
an early enrollee for Tennessee, which is even better. I mean that's just going to be another extra practices for him to get acclimated to the whole process at Tennessee.
I want to talk about Jimmy Holliday as a quarterback, not an athlete, as a quarterback for a minute. As a quarterback, Jimmy Holliday is not going to make the throws that you're going to see Harrison Bailey make. He has a good arm. It's not Harrison's arm.
No.
But between the hash marks, so if you let him come out, get in the shotgun, and he's operating, looking at tight ends, looking at slants, square ends, hitch routes, stuff that's coming to the middle of the field or working the middle of the field, he is deadly accurate. When he's able to work that and get, and he does his progressions well. 1-2 and the ball's gone. 1-2-3 and the ball's gone. He's very, very accurate over the middle. He's very accurate between the hashes. He has a strong enough arm to attack you up the middle of the field, especially on seam routes. So if you have a slot wide receiver that releases to the inside and comes upfield, Holliday's going to be able to make that throw between the safety and the linebacker on the inside of the corner. He's going to be able to hurt you with the tight end over the middle. He's really got he's got a strong enough arm to throw those darts, and he's really accurate with it. He's got a good enough arm to push the ball downfield. Now, it's not going to be 40 yards on a rope like you're going to see Bailey throw. It's going to be 40 yards and have to put some air under it and let his man run underneath it. But he times those balls well. He anticipates where his receivers are going to be well. He puts it on target. I think he's a much more accurate quarterback than he's getting credit for when you let him play his game. And he's going to be able to play his game because you can't drop 8 into coverage on Jimmy Holiday.
No.
You can't do that. Mm-mm. If you do, he's going to score a touchdown. Period. The end. Mm-hmm. You have to spy him. You have to have someone who plays him, and that's their man. Just like in a straight man coverage assignment, like he's a wide receiver. Okay, Holiday's yours. Don't let him kill us.
Mm-hmm. I'm excited to see him because he's getting used. I don't know how many times, but he's getting used this upcoming season in the Wildcat at least. I mean, that's why I said he's not redshirting. If he stays healthy, if he doesn't get hurt or anything like that in practices, they're using him in Wildcat because he is watching his film. Like you said, you want to talk about him as a quarterback. I want to talk about him just kind of as an athlete here, just overall. His film, there are guys right on top of him ready to make a tackle, and they somehow come away grabbing air instead of jersey. I mean, he makes a guy who is 2 feet in front of him miss him on a tackle. I mean, he's not just quick. He's not just fast. He's not just straight line speed kind of guy. He's like an Eric Gray, a one cut and he's gone. I mean, he can juke you out of your shoes, and he can also just evade tackles. And he's tough enough. Like he's not going to be a guy like a Lincoln Whitehead who's going to lower the shoulder and just plow through you. But he's just to me, he looks like a guy that is just slippery, and you're not gonna. It's gonna be very difficult to try to tackle him if you're one-on-one with him. You better be a sure-footed, sure tackler, because if you're not, he's breaking free and he's gone.
I really want to see him in this Wildcat package. I think this is going to give Jim Chaney an opportunity, though, to expand that Wildcat package. Yeah. Mm-hmm. You're going to have the chance to come up to Jimmy and go, okay, look, there are going to be certain parts of the playbook that I'm going to give you and Harrison. Now, there are certain throws that Harrison can make that you can't. So these route combinations I'm not going to call for you because you don't have the arm to throw it like it needs to be done. But there's going to be this Wildcat package, and we're going to build off of that for you. And it's going to be a whole different change of offense that they can come in with. Because and Juwan Jennings was a 4-star quarterback coming out. He's got a pretty good arm. Jimmy Holiday has a good enough arm to be an SEC quarterback. Like this is not a fast guy coming in that they're going to put at receiver or they're going to snap and just run with. Jimmy Holiday has a good enough arm to be an SEC quarterback. It's not that elite arm talent that you're seeing with Harrison Bailey, but he has a good enough arm to be an SEC quarterback. You can take that offense and expand it for him. And so when we see Jennings come in right now, we're almost everybody 99% sure in the back of their mind, okay, Jennings is going to run this. We all know that he can throw. We've seen the double passes. Mm-hmm. We all know it's there, and I'm kind of waiting on it in the bowl game. I'm really surprised we've not seen it yet, but I'm waiting on it in the bowl game to let him throw one. And when he does at this point, it's going to be a touchdown because everyone is lulled to sleep and just playing the run. With Holiday, I don't think it's going to be that. I think they're going to let him throw some. And much like Juwan Jennings, Jimmy Holiday's path to the field is going to be dependent on how this quarterback room goes.
Yeah.
If no one transfers and everyone's healthy, you look at Jimmy Holiday and go, okay, Jimmy, you can be a quarterback. We're gonna teach you this Wildcat package, and we're gonna let you throw some out of it. And we're going to do that no matter what. But your path to the field is a whole lot quicker if you want to play a little wide receiver. Mm-hmm. And we'll put some trick plays in for you and let you spin it out there. If Jarrett Garantano were to transfer and Brian Maurer were to transfer and Kasim Hill doesn't recover well from this last knee injury, it may be, hey, Jimmy, you and JT Shroud are fighting for the backup quarterback job. Or you're coming in to compete with Harrison Bailey and JT Shroud for the starting quarterback job. Mm-hmm. We got to have you over here. And that's going to be interesting to see how that breaks out where he fits. But he's going to play. He is a electric player.
Yeah, you're not – like I said, barring injury, I think I said in my impact report on him, good luck keeping him off the field. I mean, he's just – I think he's too quick, too good of an athlete not have on the field in some way and somehow. Like you said, even if it's just as a Wildcat, but I think he's a guy who can contribute as a receiver. He's got to learn that position, just like you said with Callaway. He didn't really, he didn't play receiver in high school. He was the quarterback there. So if that's going to be the position in the future for him, he's going to have to learn. But he's going to see the field. He's just too good. Brandon, this is a question I'm very interested to see how you answer, because I think it's down to I can picture in my head two guys you could say here, and I'm curious which one you're going to pick. Before we move on and look at who's Tennessee's top targets are going to be after this early signing period, Brandon, who's your favorite player that Tennessee signed in this class? Like I said, I can think of two that I think you might say. I'm not entirely sure if I've got my one picked, but who is your favorite player Tennessee signed in the early signing period?
There are actually four that I'm having a really, really hard time with. But as hard as it is for me to say, and as much as I love the other guys, I'm going to say Amari Thomas.
I thought that might be who it is.
I keep saying this every time I watch Amari and you watch his film. There are guys that have highlights. There are guys that make impacts. Amari Thomas destroys people. I have never seen a more destructive offensive or defensive lineman in high school in my life. He turns people into highlight films. Really, really good players into highlight films. He does things to really good high school football players that are going to play at SEC schools and going to start there early, and he just buries them. And it's awe-inspiring to watch. I told Matt this the other day. We were laughing. I said, watching Amari Thomas's highlight tapes is like if you're rooting for the T-Rex in Jurassic Park. And it's like watching the montage at the end. There's nothing you can do with him. He's so big. He's so strong. He's so fast. He's so long. He's relentless. The technique is good. He's smart. He has a high football IQ. He's an outstanding kid off the field. He's already trying to do philanthropic work as a high school student. Mm-hmm. How do you not love this kid?
Yeah, it makes it easy to pick him too, because like you said, it's not just that he's great on the field. He's a really good guy on the field, or off the field, excuse me. I remember when we talked about when he committed, him and Jabari, when we talked about it in the podcast, that Wednesday. I think he's the next, of a guy who's being an ambassador for the program. I think he's the next Trey Smith in that regard, as far as just being I think a really good player on the field, but also being an even better human off of it. We're seeing Trey Smith being up for these awards for the community service stuff that he does, and obviously for his story of battling back from the blood clots and everything that he's gone through. I think with Amari Thomas, he's going to be one of those guys that's always up for one of the community service stuff, and then the academic honor rolls and all this different stuff. Amari's just a really good kid, like you said, off the field, not just on it too. I was wondering if you were going to pick Amari or if it was going to be Jalen Hyatt. Those are the two I thought for you, Brandon, by the way.
Those were the top two. I really had a hard time with those two, and then Leith Whitehead and Bryson Easton are right behind them. Those four are real close.
I think for me, it came down to three guys, kind of mainly. Jalen Hyatt was one of mine too, and we've both sat here and raved about Jalen Hyatt on multiple occasions on this podcast, and I still think he's one of my top three favorite guys that they brought in this class. And I think it'd be easy to say Harrison Bailey. He's not my favorite in the class. I think he's really good, though. That's not to say he's not good. I just think it'd be easy, obviously, to say, Harrison Bailey, the high 4-star quarterback. I honestly think because of the way he fits in this system and the way I think he could become, I guess, a future player in this system, the way that what Pruitt likes to do with his 3-4 defense and his star position, it might be Danico Slaughter for me. It's him or Morven Joseph. Those two guys, just the way they play, the way they fit into this defensive system. Joseph, obviously more as a pass rusher, but just him as a complete linebacker. Pruitt mentions all the time that he likes to get guys, as he calls them, 4-for-4 linebackers. One of the first things he said about Morven Joseph on Wednesday in his press conference was that he thinks that Morven can play all 4 linebacker positions, and that's impressive. I mean, that and watching him in high school, he played outside linebacker, as you mentioned. He played outside. He played with his hand in the dirt. He played inside. I mean, he played multiple defensive positions in high school. He's a smart kid. It's between him and Danico Slaughter. I think I'm going to go Slaughter just because his film is so highly impressive. He's a guy that I think, even if he doesn't have an impact on defense initially, he's going to do something on special teams. If he doesn't block a kick or a punt at some point in his Tennessee career, I'll be stunned. I just think he's a great fit as a star nickel player for Tennessee, and I think with how Pruitt likes to use that position, he reminds me a little bit of, and I think actually Jason Swain said this too, a little bit of Rashawn Golden. And if Golden had been in Pruitt's system his whole 3 years at Tennessee, or I guess 4, he had the redshirt because of injury. But if Golden had been in Pruitt's system, I think Golden would have been a second round, first round pick, because Golden I think would have really flourished. He already had a pretty good career at Tennessee the way it was, but I think he would have flourished in Pruitt's defensive system. So based purely on not only just as an athlete, as a player, but kind of the fit I see him in the defense, I think I'll go Slaughter. But man, Morven Joseph, watching his film, I think my favorite films of the guys this cycle that Tennessee got, of actually watching the film. Amari Thomas is up there too, but I think obviously Jimmy Holliday, Morven Joseph, and I think really Slaughter. Those are probably my 3 guys I love watching the film of in this class, because they just, man, they're just fun to watch. This class has a lot of guys who look really good on film, and that's what you want to see. They're not just rated because they did well at camps and things like that. A lot of these guys looked really good on their films. I mean, even the Whitehaven guys look really good on their film too, and you all got to see them in person a lot too. Eason's going to be interesting to watch this year. As you mentioned, I think he's a guy that could start early. We'll see, but
I can't wait to see Henry Toa and Bryson Eason lined up beside each other in the middle of a 3-4 defense and see what they do to a running back. I can't wait, because we all know how good Daniel Batuli is. We all appreciate Daniel Batuli for what he has done here. Really has had, he was a highly rated kid coming out of Nashville. When he got to Tennessee, sort of got pressed into service in tough circumstances, playing that Georgia Tech triple option, and has really been a very consistent, very solid player for Tennessee ever since. He very quietly will turn up and have really, really good games, and I don't think for some reason he gets the publicity for that he should. He's had some really outstanding games this year. He's been a leader on this defense. He's a huge reason that they're where they're at, but he is a big, physical, strong, see-ball, get-ball linebacker.
Yep.
And Bryson Eason is already bigger and stronger than he is.
Eason's a freak athlete. He's a guy that, I like you said, I think he has a high ceiling here too. But Brandon, to kind of wrap up the podcast here, and this will be, I think, maybe one of the more intriguing parts of the podcast for the listeners. So I apologize for us kind of holding off here to the end, but that's what you do for podcasts. Sometimes you got to keep the juicy parts till the end, just for a little podcasting etiquette there for you. But obviously, Tennessee 21 signees. They have 2 guys who are committed but didn't sign, when Darian Williamson and Kyrie Miller. Well, first of all, before we move on here, before the targets and stuff, do we think both those guys end up making it into the class, or are they both going to be end up not making it into this class?
It's sounding and looking more and more like Darian Williamson is going to be in the class, but probably as a blue shirt.
Okay.
That's kind of, they've not gone in home with him. He hasn't been unofficial. He's an in-state kid. It's really looking like Williamson's probably going to be a blue shirt. Miller is the interesting one.
Yeah, before you say that, Miller, I think Williamson, it would have been interesting to see what had happened with him if not for his season-ending injury that he had kind of early in his season. So I wonder if he would have always been a blue shirt candidate, or if that kind of made that more of a possibility. But I agree with you. I think he's going to be a blue shirt. I'm sorry, go ahead and go and talk about Miller now, though.
You're good. Miller is going to be an interesting one, because Miller is Jim Chaney's guy in this class. Jim Chaney loves Kyrie Miller. Loves him. Kyrie Miller's going to be a project. Right off the top, Kyrie Miller's going to have to lose about 50 pounds.
Yeah.
Before we talk about anything else, before we talk about is he a guard, is he a tackle, he's going to have to lose 40 to 50 pounds, and that does not come off easy. Believe me, I know. That doesn't come off easy. Then beyond that, they like him as a tackle, and I think Kyrie Miller could be a really dominant guard. I think if you get him down 330, 320, 325, somewhere in that range. Take some bad weight off him, increase his strength, increase his stamina, work on his feet some. I think in a phone booth as a guard, he's a runaway dump truck. They want him at tackle, and I just don't know that he has the feet for it. I just don't know that his feet are quick enough to play tackle, and I don't know that they ever will be. It's hard to gauge that on film.
Mm-hmm.
And again, you have to see him lose all this weight and see what he does. He may look completely different when he loses all that weight, but you don't know. You're taking that chance. I've seen as a guard, I can get behind Kyrie Miller as a guard, especially a guard you run behind. I don't know about a tackle. I think it's going to come down to who can Tennessee get. If they have an opportunity to get a more polished, higher rated, finished product offensive lineman, they may take them and let Miller look elsewhere. Another option may be if Tennessee can get 2 really elite defensive linemen in this class, 2 really good defensive linemen in those last 4 spots, you may see Reginald Perry move to tackle.
Mm-hmm.
Miller be let go and then take the 2 defensive linemen. So Miller, it's going to depend on I think who they can land, who they can get, and how it breaks. He could stay, or they could try to recruit over him. It's just going to depend.
Yeah, I think Williamson's going to be in the class. If I had to bank on it, though, I don't think Miller is, like you said, unless they miss on the guys, because it does seem like they're going to be pursuing several lines of scrimmage guys, and I think unless they miss on them, Jim Chaney's guy, as you said, I think he just might not be part of the class. And Chaney likes him, but like you said, he likes him as a project. He doesn't like him as an immediate contributor. I don't think Miller, if he makes it in this class, he's not a guy that's going to play his first 2 years on campus. He's going to have the redshirt his first year. And then
absolutely.
He's still not playing his second year, I don't think. So I think they're in a spot where they can afford that right now with the offensive line the way it is, and who they're bringing in with this class and who they have right now. If this was last year, they don't take a risk on Miller. But
no,
this is this class, and I think they can do it. So it'll be interesting. But in that same vein, Tennessee's got about technically 4, but I think maybe upwards of 6, depending on like you said, with Williamson and Miller spots being open, and Williamson potentially being a blue shirt. 4 to 6 to maybe even 7, 8, depending on what all Tennessee wants to do, and maybe even transfers and stuff like that. What they pursue in the transfer market this offseason. But let's assume they have 4, 5, 6 spots available for this class remaining. Obviously, Darnell Washington. That whole situation is kind of weird too. Did he sign this week? Did he not? We don't know. Darnell Washington. That whole thing's kind of crazy. But obviously, him and Jay Hardy are the 2 big name guys Tennessee's still going to be pursuing. But who else? We've mentioned, I think, Jalen St. John. I think we mentioned on the podcast. I know we've talked about it off the podcast before, but he's kind of the one big offensive lineman that we'd say to kind of look at. But Brandon, who else is Tennessee going to be going after? I think D. Beckwith is a name to keep an eye on, but I've heard a lot of mention. I've seen him get a lot of crystal balls to South Carolina now, but I've heard a lot of mention of a guy named Jahari Caldwell, who I think is a really good athlete, wide receiver type prospect. Jahari Caldwell, I cannot say his name. He's going to start blowing up in the recruiting rankings, but he's getting some crystal balls to South Carolina. But do you think Tennessee has interest there? And aside from the other guys I mentioned, who else should Tennessee fans be keeping an eye on that Tennessee could be maybe turning the heat up on here between now and February?
I think Tennessee is going to, at this point, step back and however many spots they've got left, whether it's 4, whether it's 6 with blue shirts or moving guys, whatever, they need another wide receiver. They have to get another wide receiver. And I think Tennessee's going to take this opportunity to sit back and just reset their board and go, who's still left? Who have we already offered? Who do we want to jump in on here? Who do we want to get involved with now that we've not been in on and start trying to recruit? And I think you're going to see Tennessee just reset their board. One of the guys that was getting some buzz earlier, and he wound up not signing, was Corey Wren. Corey Wren is an absolute burner. He has been committed to Georgia at one point. He's 5'9", 170 pounds is what he's listed at. I think he's probably a little heavier than that. Out of Louisiana, out of New Orleans, he's not a big receiver, but he's kind of like Hyatt, kind of like Callaway. He's a burner. And I think he's underrated. He's a 3-star, but when you look at his offer list and how it's starting to blow up, that's not a 3-star offer list. He's another guy like Jimmy Holliday. He's going up. Wren is a real speed guy. They like him. Tennessee's offered him. They've made some headway there. An interesting one for wide receiver, and I've talked about him before, but it is D. Beckwith. Now, the great thing for Tennessee about the weirdness of this Darnell Washington situation is that if Washington signed, and it looks like he signed with somebody, if Washington signed and is keeping it quiet to announce at the Under Armour game, then if he signed, when he announces, if you're Tennessee still in the dead period, you're going to know we have a tight end. You may already know you have a tight end, but you're going to find out we don't. We need a tight end because he signed with Georgia or Miami. And he signed and he's done. And since he signed, there's no point in continuing to recruit him. There's no point in continuing to put effort there. We got to reset the tight end board. Maybe he signed with Tennessee and they're keeping it quiet. Maybe he didn't sign at all, in which case you still have to decide how to fight over him. If they miss on Washington and he signs elsewhere, I think D. Beckwith becomes a really interesting prospect for Tennessee. Beckwith is a guy I would lobby to take in this class no matter what, if you can get him. He helps you at wide receiver. He's different than a lot of the other receivers on the roster, especially after this season. He's 6'5", about 220, 225. He's a big, thick athlete. He's got a big frame. He's a very smooth runner. He's got good speed. He plays quarterback at Florence, and he's another guy. He's got a better arm than you think. Now, could he be an emergency quarterback for you? Yeah, he could be an emergency quarterback. He could fill that Wildcat role and probably fill it a lot closer to what Jennings does. Beckwith is also a guy that you could conceivably get up to maybe 230 or 235 and let him help you at tight end. He wouldn't be your true inline blocking tight end like Dominic Wood-Anderson was, but he's going to be a strong, athletic, receiving tight end who is able to throw some blocks. And he's going to understand passing concepts from being a quarterback. And he's going to be able to understand that whether he's a wide receiver or a tight end, because he and Holliday have this advantage, I feel, over Callaway. Callaway didn't throw the ball a whole lot. Jimmy Holliday and D. Beckwith throw the ball a pretty good bit. They understand route concepts, and they understand how to read them. And I think the move from quarterback to outside at receiver is going to be easier for them. So Beckwith is going to be a really interesting guy. I like him a lot. I think you find a place for him in the class. They have talked to him about being a wide receiver, a tight end, a linebacker even, playing the role that Jennings has got now. This is a guy that I would like to see Tennessee get, and I think you make a place for. We've mentioned Jalen St. John, big offensive tackle, guard out of Trinity Catholic in St. Louis, Missouri. He was a Missouri commit. It looks like it's going to come down to Missouri, Arkansas, or Tennessee. Tennessee has showed some interest there. Missouri's trying hard to keep him. And Arkansas now has the double-edged sword of Sam Pittman recruiting an offensive lineman close to home, and Barry Odom is his new defensive coordinator, who was the head coach he committed to at Missouri. So that's going to be a difficult recruitment to get involved with there. I wouldn't be stunned to see Tennessee try to get involved with Marcus Henderson again. I don't think that one's completely and totally over. One that I like a lot and that I think could be interesting, and Reginald Perry facilitates this being something that can work, is Andy Boykin. Andy Boykin is a defensive end down at Troup County High School in LaGrange, Georgia. Boykin is about 6'4", 265. He's been considered a pretty heavy Auburn lean. The thing is, does Auburn have room for him now? And with the guys that Auburn signed, are they going to be able to keep him? Let me pull something up here. I want to make sure I have all of my numbers right here. So Auburn has already got 22 guys signed.
Mm-hmm.
They already have 22 guys signed. They still have a hard commitment from Jay Hardy at the moment and from Jonathan Buskey. But they landed Danielle Foster Allen, who is a high 3-star. I'm going off 247 here. Zykevius Walker, who is a high 4-star. Those guys are already signed.
Mm-hmm.
You've got Hardy. You've got a very nearly full class. What are your needs if you're Auburn? What else do you want to do? Do you want to take a chance on a guy like Boykin? Is that where you want to go on this one? Do you feel you could spend this scholarship better somewhere else? Boykin is interesting to me because he's different than some of the other defensive linemen Tennessee has landed in this class. Most of the other guys are up near 300 pounds. Boykin is a guy who at 265, maybe you bulk him up to 280 and let him play that 3-4 end and let him be a 5 technique. Maybe he's a guy you try to keep around 260, 270, which is still really big for a 4-3 end. Little small for a 3-4 end, but he gives you a change of pace. He gives you a pass rush package. And if you decide to go 4-down lineman, it's another option you can roll in. He's a chess piece to me. He's a very, very good talent. I think Tennessee has had some interest there in the past. And if you're Tennessee and you've only got 4 guys left, in an ideal world, if you're Tennessee, I feel like the best case scenario that happens is you land Darnell Washington, you flip Jay Hardy, you take D. Beckwith or Corey Wren. For me, it's probably D. Beckwith, but Wren's still really good. I just like the versatility of Beckwith. And I think you take Boykin, and you can take Boykin, let Miller go out of the class, move Reginald Perry to offensive tackle, and create that depth on the defensive line because now you have Hardy and Boykin. You feel better about letting Perry go the other way. I think for 4 guys, you have an opportunity to help more positions that way. So he's an interesting one to watch for me. It's going to be interesting to see what the tight end board looks like if they miss on Washington and what the wide receiver board is going to look like.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. I think those are two of the probably more intriguing positions, like you said, depending on what happens, obviously, with Darnell Washington. I think offensive tackle is one, like we mentioned, that you'd like to get. I don't think it's as pressing of a need because you have Darnell Wright, and Wanya Morris there, and you have some guys who can, you have some guys who can back you up there on tackle if you need to. But I think getting an offensive tackle wouldn't be a bad idea. Like I said, Kyrie Miller could be that, but you don't know. Where Tennessee moves forward, like I said, there are 2 obvious ones with Darnell Washington and Jay Hardy. Those 2 have spots no matter what. No matter who else Tennessee brings in this class, they'll make room somehow for Washington and Hardy if they both want in or if either one of them want in. But like you said, I think it's going to be interesting to see. I think Tennessee will send out a few new offers as well because there's going to be guys who didn't sign. I mean, we saw obviously in the first early signing period, but that was also Pruitt just getting in and having 2 weeks, not even 2 weeks to prepare for the early signing period, and then really having to hit the ground running and try to find guys second time around. But we saw him, target some new guys and whatnot in the second time last year in the 2019 cycle between the end of December and then in February that they targeted some new guys and were trying to get footholds in with a few new guys. And obviously that's when they ended up signing Henry To'oTo'o was on National Signing Day, and I'm trying to remember who else they signed on actual
Darnell Wright.
National Signing Day. Yeah, Darnell Wright. Yeah, but that was obviously he wasn't a new guy. Neither one of those 2 guys were new guys, but those were 2 the big 2 names Tennessee got. The 2 Terry To'oTo'o should have been a 5-star. I don't know how he wasn't, but essentially the 2 5-stars they got on National Signing Day. But Brandon, I think that'll about do it. We could probably go a little bit longer, but I think that's a good place to kind of leave off on this podcast. You guys absolutely killed it on the early signing period on Wednesday. Take a little bit of a break this week after that because, for one, there's not been as much news from Tennessee since then. But you guys absolutely killed it with all the live streams, with all the coverage you guys had on actual early signing period. Now that we're kind of getting to a dead period, I know there won't be as much recruiting stuff except for kind of recapping and looking at this class and kind of going in depth of the class. But what all do you guys have coming down the wire, and what is available on the site right now?
We're going to continue keeping our basketball coverage up, even through the football recruiting dead period. That's going to be something we do. We're going to do some analysis of this class. We're going to take a look at some of the other classes and how Tennessee stacks up, look for themes within this class, guys we think can play. We've got interviews that we're still going to release. We have video interviews that we've not let go yet from signing day. So we'll have some of that for you. And then, as the dead period winds down, it's going to be ramping right back up and hitting the ground running to start this whole thing again, this whole process again, and see where Tennessee goes. But the basketball coverage is going to stay up. We're going to keep doing that as much as we can. We are going to slow down a little bit for Christmas.
Right.
We're going to take a little bit of time off right there, but we're going to hit the ground running. We're going to keep things going for you over at VR2.site. Give us a look, give us a listen. We're going to try to keep the Insider Notebook up. Some of those video interviews, if we get them, they go there first, and go for our premium users first. $3 a month, guys. If you are listening to this podcast, then clearly you care about Tennessee recruiting, and I am telling you, if you care enough to listen to Nathaniel and I talk for an hour, you care enough to spend the $3 for this Insider Notebook. We put a lot of stuff in there. There's a lot of great content, stuff that we don't run on our website at all because we want to keep it there. We also have some stuff that it all goes there first. You'll get the scoop there, and then it goes out to everybody else. So there's going to be interviews. There are going to be videos come out. We'll probably do some more highlight pieces on the guys that Tennessee has got in the class. We'll have plenty coming, and then, again, after Christmas, we start back up for regular signing day. And that's going to be, I think, Nathaniel, I kind of think that the run-up to February might actually be wilder than December was for Tennessee. Tennessee signed 5 guys. We all felt pretty good about them signing 5 guys that we're announcing. I think that February run-up could get real crazy.
Yeah, because you don't feel as confident. Although I guess 2 months out, or I guess a month and a half out from this past Wednesday, we didn't feel as confident about Tennessee, getting a Morven Joseph, for example, or getting some of the guys that ended up getting in this class, like a Leith Whitehead. But lots going to change between now and that first Wednesday of February. Does Jay Hardy, what's he end up doing? Tennessee is supposed to be getting a visit from Nazir Stackhouse in Georgia. I don't, we all have talked about, we don't think that actually will flip for Tennessee's favor. But they're getting him on campus, and he's talked about having a good relationship with Tennessee's coaches, and he's still giving Tennessee a chance. He's still kind of open to everyone else, even though he's committed to Georgia. So, that's still going to be something to watch out for. Like you said, there doesn't really feel like a guy that Tennessee will definitely get between now and February, but there's plenty of guys that are going to be targeting between now and February. Like you said, VR2.site is where you can find them. They're at _VR2_ on Twitter. They are VR2 on Facebook and Instagram as well. We're RockyTopInsider.com, and you can also find us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and of course YouTube. As a way a lot of you listen to the podcast and interact with it, so we appreciate that a ton. The last couple of podcasts, you guys have just blown me away with the reception and the viewers/listens to it. Thank you all so much for that. Thank you all so much for listening to this podcast. Signing off for Brandon, I am Nathaniel, and we'll be back again sometime soon for another episode of the RTI and VR2 Recruiting Podcast.